Welcome, gamers, to this week's episode of Last Call Gaming. We're episode number 206. Today is December 18th. My name is Craig Perales, and joining me, looking dapper and suave as ever, Ranger Montemayor.
We out here.
So, guys, we do have some big cleaning house to do, and I mean that literally. So, if you guys have been wondering what we've been up to, we haven't had a show on, I believe, for almost a month now, and a few big things have been happening, and I'll kind of say mine first because it pales in comparison to what Andrew is going through. But if you can't tell, there's no background anymore at the moment because I just moved. It was a quick, fast move. Normally, you know you're moving in like 30 days. I had to move within like less than 10.
Yeah, it was really fast.
It was really fast, and I went from a 2-bedroom kind of duplex apartment that had 2 stories to a 3-bedroom house with a garage and a yard. And Andrew, I just showed Andrew this is the first time Andrew's actually been over here to take a look at it. And it just took a lot, not out of me, but there's just a lot to do to set up. So even like the game room we're going to record today, you know, it's very meticulous in how I want to put things up. So like what you guys can't see is the rest of the room is kind of done. It's just this one wall that I haven't done yet. So that's what took a lot of my time up. The packing was a lot. There's still a lot of stuff in the garage. There's still stuff on some of the floors in the other room. But I do want to give a big shout out to Daniel if he's watching this, because Daniel helped me out. I had a lot of friends ask to offer. Andrew offered. My buddy Rudy offered. But it's one of those things you never want to go out of your way to put somebody in like a burden. Dante offered to do so. But when Daniel was coming over to deliver my fridge, he was just in kind of move mode, and we just kind of knocked it out in a day. So on my end, it took a lot to get the house kind of ready because it is 3 different rooms that I'm kind of putting together, and it's still not even done. So as far as what's been taking up my time, like I haven't even played a game. I haven't beat a game since Thanksgiving, except for the game that we're going to be talking about. So within a month, that's all I've been able to really play. So my time has been focused there. But Andrew, what's been taking up your time, my good man?
I was like, don't feel so bad about whatever, because I still have stuff that's not unpacked from when I moved. And if you go to my house, like my brother was giving me shit the other day. It's like, oh, I bought you this thing. You haven't hung it on your wall, just breaking balls. I'm like, dude.
I saw the thing you got me, and I'm still waiting. Oh, that'd be kind of cool right here.
I'm like, dude, I have like a $400 statue that's still in a box that I bought like 2 years ago that hasn't moved. So
I think Geno still got furniture in his garage too. So yeah, it took up a lot of my time.
So it's always it's a hassle. But as far as me, why I've kind of been quiet, even though I kind of have been playing some games, is I've been prepping because I'm actually going to be having a kid, my first child. And so that's been where a lot of my time's been, is like going through like doctor stuff, kind of trying to prep my house. I just want to get everything done as soon as possible, so that way I don't have to worry about it later on down the road. So for any of those interested, we just found out we are going to be having a boy, so I'm very excited.
Very, very excited. And also, so yeah, that's what we've been kind of down and out. We figured, you know, this is time we both needed to figure some stuff out, and unfortunately, since it is just the 2 of us mainly doing shows, you know, there's only so much we can put out. But also, big shout out to Andrew's birthday is tomorrow, so I made sure that we got some Kona Big Waves for the show to celebrate with Andrew. So even though this might be blank, hey, the party is all up here. So, anything else, Andrew, you want to get into while we took a break, or are we good to go?
No, and I do appreciate the Konas. I love a Kona Big Wave. They're so good. Out of season beer, but very good beer.
They're the best, and I want to make sure I found them today. So, with that being said, guys, please, I hope you guys understand that we both went through just a big process in our life that both is, you know, drastically changing and will change in big ways. So, with that out of the way, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. If you guys are wanting to follow us on any of the social medias, our Linktree link is in the description. And if you guys are listening on the audio-only version of the podcast, you can listen to the podcast platform of your choice. So, with that down, guys, we'd like to do What Are You Up To? Where Andrew and I take a second about what we've been playing, what we've been doing. But since it's been so much over a month, I don't want to take too long on it. My main thing, I'll go first on this one, just because mine's kind of more of a reminder to those of you who maybe kind of forgot. So, playing wise, we'll get into that. But as far as what I've been watching, Creature Commandos is a show that just dropped on December 5th on HBO Max. There's 3 episodes out. The next one comes out tomorrow, so I believe they drop every Thursday. It's getting decent reviews. Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 94%. IMDb has it at a 7.7. The reason I wanted to bring it up because it is the first entry point into the new James Gunn DCU. So even though the new Superman movie is going to be the first film, this cartoon is what's kind of bridging the gap between what's going to be moving forward as canon and what they're still recognized as canon. So, for example, the Weasel from Suicide Squad, he's in the show, but everything that happened in Suicide Squad isn't canon. So if that matters to you and you want to take a peek at it, everything they kind of mention and everything they talk about is going to be official, combining that, things from Peacemaker and things like that. It's got really interesting characters because they're not Task Force X, they're Task Force M. So essentially it's like a group of monsters, and you have like the Bride of Frankenstein, Dr. Phosphorus, G.I. Robot, Frankenstein, Rick Flag Sr., and I would say the first episode I thought was very slow. The next two really ramp up, and I'm really curious to see how they do tomorrow's episode. So I'll leave it at that, and maybe next week we can dive more into it. As far as
I was gonna say, I've seen some clips.
Have you started it at all?
No, I haven't watched it, but I've seen some clips. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I just kind of need to get to it. But I love G.I. Robot. Like just from the little clips I've seen, I'm like, man, that dude's so cool.
It's a lot of Nazi talk. It's a lot of this guy. There's an episode called Cheers to the Tin Man, I believe. It's episode 2, maybe it was 3. That's all about his origin story, and it's hilarious and funny. And I think it's got a lot of potential. Every episode has like a weird song that they play, and but again though, like it's not the greatest show, and I think depending on the next episode, I'll see how strong it is. But I think a lot of people so far, it's getting good reviews by those who've seen it, but I don't think a lot of people in general are actually going out of there to watch it. But if you are interested in it, do it sooner than later, because 20-minute episodes is only 3. Now would be the time to kind of catch up on it. But
the animation looks good.
The animation is pretty good. So as far as the other thing that I was watching, and again, just more of a reminder, is that show Secret Level, which premiered on Amazon on December 10th, 2024, which was 15 animated standalone short stories based on several video games and their franchises. As far as I looked, they're all out, because I ran through them a lot yesterday, and I think I only have 3 left. So just to remind you, the shows that they're covering are Armored Core, Concord, Crossfire, Dungeons and Dragons, Exodus, Honor of Kings, Mega Man, New World, Atrium? The Outer Worlds 2, Pac-Man, which is the Shadow Labyrinth, PlayStation, Sifu, Spelunky, Unreal Tournament, and Warhammer 40,000, Space Marine 2. It's like that other show, Love, Death, and Robots. It's the same kind of stories that are kind of spread out in these like 17 minutes. They're not all great, but there were some that were actually really fantastic. And the ones that I wrote down were Armored Core was great. Mega Man, which I thought was one of the best. It hurts because they stop it so short. Like, it's out of the 16 minutes, it stops at 10. There's like 16 minutes of credits. Mega Man was awesome. Sifu was a really good one. The Outer World, and I think the best one, and maybe it's because I'm biased, was the Dungeons and Dragons episode. So I haven't gotten to the PlayStation one yet, because I know in the original trailer you can see like Kratos and things like that. So I'm curious how good that one's going to be. But overall, they're really fun. If you have Amazon Prime, check them out. 15 episodes, 17 minutes. You can run through them pretty quick. I almost ran through them just sitting down at night. Have you started that at all?
No, I think
does this reminder help you too?
I kind of with like a lot of these bigger shows that just released within the past 2 weeks. After this Friday, I'm going on a 2-week vacation from work. Then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to knock these things out.
Perfect. So that is as much as what I've been watching, guys. And again, just reminders, if you forgot that they were out, check them out now. Andrew, what have you been up to, my friend?
Okay, so we do have one big game that we've been playing together that we're going to talk about later, but I got a couple other small things. I double-checked the last episode before. I don't think I'd finished Metaphor then. I did finally finish it, and I'm just throwing that out because I am working on something separate, so keep an eye out for that because I love that game. But I do want to give a shout-out to our good friend Denny because we have a gamer guy Snapchat that we send each other stuff of what we're playing and updates and stuff. And I completely forgot about Still Wakes the Deep. That came out this year, I think, in June. And it's a horror game. And it's almost kind of like Amnesia-esque, where you're kind of just like walking through. It's not so much like combat. There's monsters and you're sneaking through, but you're out on like an oil rig. And it's really, really good. I actually really liked it a lot. You can beat it in like 3 hours.
I just downloaded it today because of you and Denny playing it.
But yeah, after you send it out, I'm like, oh, you know what? That was going to be my I wanted to play it when it came out, but something else had come out, so I put it on the back burner. That was going to be my Halloween game, but I don't remember what happened during Halloween. I was playing something. It seems like I'm always playing something else when I want to be playing these other ones. And it was really good. I'm glad that I played it. I went through and it was an easy 1000%, but I really enjoyed doing it.
Heavy guides or just making sure you don't miss anything?
I think the only thing that is a little bit difficult is I would play the guide if you're trying to do the 1000 because you can do it all in one go. There's one where you're supposed to find like dead bodies of like the crew members who die along your journey too, but there's also another one for you're supposed to die in all the like unique ways. There's not too many, but when I was playing it before, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna play it and I'm just gonna figure it out myself. And there's one that's very vague. It says like die from falling off the oil rig in 5 different spots into the water. So when I was just playing, every time I saw a spot with water, I would just jump off and I would notice the achievement tracker wouldn't go up. And then when I'm following the guide, it wouldn't be like, okay, it's in this side of the room and that side of the room, which technically is 2 different spots. It's like, no, this section of the rig, that section of the rig, that section of the rig. So it's an easy guide to follow through. I would, if you use Maka's, if any of you guys use Maka's guides for it, look at the comments, because there is one that I had to go back and do. Now they patched in chapter select, so it was easy. But when looking at all the dead bodies, there's one behind a door that he didn't say anything about. You actually have to interact with the door, and that was the one thing I was missing.
Bummer.
So, other than that, as far as watching anything, I actually decided, because I've been watching, I watch a ton of YouTube, especially while I'm at work. I follow this dude called TGS Anime, and I don't think I've talked about it before, but I really like what he does is he breaks down. I'm a big fan of Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially the OG show, and he breaks down duels, like the Battle City and everything else like that, and he says, could this person have won? And so, like, he'll do the Kaiba Joy one where they battle
like
for
specs and things like that.
So where they battle for like 3rd place in the Battle City tournament, and it's like, could Joey have won? And so he breaks down everybody's hand and saying, okay, if he had played this card at that turn, but he doesn't do like, oh, well, if he had this card in his hand or whatever like that. No, it's based off of what they drew at the time. If he had played this and that he played it before Kaiba played that, so technically he misplayed because this would have been the more optimal play to do. So he does like a really cool breakdown of like how the cards worked, and
that's hot dork though.
It's super nerdy. They're like 20 to 30 minutes long, but I love watching them, and so that got me back into watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I never watched it after the Battle City finals, and that's when they do the Waking the Dragon and introduce like all the Orichalcos cards, and so I just started watching that, and I almost want to kind of skip some of the stuff and do like a no filler guide, but I feel like that would kind of be ruining it. It's just hard because sometimes there's just so much talking, and I'm like, I just want to watch the duels. That's all I'm really interested in. I love the card game itself. It's just everything else out there in between it. I'm like, I don't care about the power of friendship.
I don't care.
But
anything else?
No, other than that, that's what I've been doing. If you're super into Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think you would really like it a lot.
It's a super good watch. You said TGS, and I was like, what am I missing? And I was typing in, and I'm like, I don't think I read what you said correctly. That it's a YouTuber.
Yes.
TGS Anime, because I was looking up like a show or something. I'm like, I thought it was like maybe like a GBZ Kai or something. But yeah, when I finally found the guy, I was like, oh, cool. And then he has all these breakdowns. I was like, that's okay. That's cool.
Yeah, and he doesn't just do like that OG Yu-Gi-Oh! He does like I think like the 5Ds and the GX, and I think even GX. The movies and stuff like that. I think GX was as far as I went. I didn't do the ones where they start like riding the bikes. I think that's like 5D.
Yeah.
But he does like pretty much the entire series because he's a huge Yu-Gi-Oh! Nerd. So
excellent. So leave down in the comments, guys, below what you've been up to, what you've been playing, what you've been watching, and of course on our next episode we'll dive a little more heavier into some of the stuff that's been on the back burner. So with that down out of the way, guys, let's move into our main story, which is going to be a somewhat light review of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that just came out on December 9th of 2024. To catch you up, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a 2024 action-adventure game developed by Machine Games and published by Bethesda Softworks. It is based on the Indiana Jones franchise and features an original narrative that draws from the film series. It's getting fantastic reviews.
Good.
IGN 9 out of 10, GameSpot 9 out of 10, Metacritic 86%, majority of viewers that have played it 95%. So just to put it on, just to make it clear of how far we are, I've beaten the game. Andrew, you said you're on the first act to the Vatican, or did you get to the next spot?
I'm done with the Vatican, and I'm ready to leave and go to the next spot.
Okay, cool. So
spoilers, you're in the Vatican.
Well, there's places you're gonna see. So, because I'm gonna read some of the places that you go to. So, just to put this on a bigger scope, because I want to talk about the story and the cinematic of it, and then we can kind of get into the gameplay. So, the cinematic. So before I dive more into this, are you familiar with the movies at all? And if not, or if so, do they help anybody more or less if they haven't?
I've only seen, I think it's 4 is the one with Shia LaBeouf, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Is that 4?
I think that should be 4, yeah.
That's the only one I've seen in full. I'm familiar kind of what happens in like Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I don't even know what is it the third one with his dad?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
What is that one?
It's Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and let me look it up real quick, but keep going.
But no, I don't think it hurts anybody. I think you'd probably maybe get a little bit more enjoyment because there is like some throwbacks to some things that happen. I think this game takes place after 2.
Yeah, the last Crusade. That's what
this game takes place, I think, like between some of the.
Let me chime in there, and we'll kind of pick it from that.
In between some of the movies, but either way, having not seen them, I still love it as long as you like adventure and you like the idea of what Indiana Jones stands for, like that whole archaeologist mystery, almost like a James Bond without the gadgets. I think is like kind of one of the best ways to describe him. So I really, really like it a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've seen the original 3.
I do want to go and watch those now.
It's been a while though. I've never seen the other 2 because is it just one other one? Is it just the Skull one? There's so many.
It's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then they had whatever the newer one was that came out like 2 years ago. I think 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
it's a more recent one.
I've never seen any of those 2. So from what I was reading from other people and seeing that it does enhance the gameplay in terms of getting the feel of Indiana Jones and getting the cinematic scope of it. So just to put it in a bigger lens, it says Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the 2024 action-adventure game developed by Machine Game Bethesda, set between the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981 and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989.
Okay.
The story follows archaeologist Indiana Jones in 1937 as he attempts to thwart various groups who are seeking to harness a power connected to the Great Circle, which refers to two mysterious sites around the world that form a perfect circle when connected together on a map. The game spans numerous real-world locales such as the Vatican City, Thailand, Egypt, and Shanghai. So
I do kind of want to jump in and say, I know originally when we first heard this, we're like, that name's fucking stupid. But after playing it, I'm like, okay, I get it now because I just wasn't knowledgeable about that whole thing. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah, once you get bigger to the context of it, it is perfectly fine. But with that being said, though, this game is very cinematic, and without spoiling the opening, it opens on a very movie-like scale. The narrative is very Indiana Jones. Once you start getting into what he's doing, the epic adventure that he's going through, the dialogue is one of the things I'm picking up the most. This person is the way it was written sounds exactly like 1980s Indiana Jones was written. So they captured that very well. It fits into the timeline perfectly to explain that time gap of what was going on between those first 2 movies. Again, he's still fighting Nazis, and eventually he'll get into fascists and things like that. So I thought everything that he was battling and everything he was doing was perfect. The fact that it puts in all these different locales that you can go to, and the way they still do it is when you're traveling on the map, the arrow still points like kind of where you're going and things like that. In terms of what they were able to show at each locale, and I don't want to spoil too much for you or the people that haven't played it yet, is there's a lot of story. So when you're playing the game, Andrew and I were kind of talking about this off camera, was you can either beeline this movie or beeline this game, and I think it treats it more as a cinematic experience. It treats it more like a movie because you're hitting these beats quicker to hit the storyline, and that's one way to play it, and I think that's perfectly fine. But the other way would be to make sure when you're at all these places is to explore all of them and see all the cool stuff that they've put in. I maybe would argue it would be beat it as fast as you can if you want to accept it as the movie kind of version. And then the cool thing about the story is that there's a lot you can revisit every location to go pick up anything you wanted to do. So, because one of the big things that I fell trapped to was I didn't want to leave until I did everything. But the more I played it, I was like, you know what? It might have been better to get the storyline as a movie and then go back and do the the exploration kind of stuff. But again, to each their own. That's just kind of the way I would pitch it. But how are you enjoying it?
After I started playing it, that's what I decided to do, because I was doing some side stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm super interested in the story, that I don't want to fall trapped to that, where I'm sitting here for 5 hours extra before I move on doing this extra.
Parts you're going through, and I'm just like, okay, I gotta make sure I get this and this.
Or just trying to solve these puzzles and like getting frustrated over them. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna beeline the story, and then because I always look at the achievements and I'm looking back at them, it's like revisit an area as an achievement. I'm like, okay, obviously I can come back. This stuff isn't missable. I'll just come back and do all this.
Yeah, as far as the actors and things like that. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the people that were portraying characters in this. Obviously, Troy Baker does Indiana Jones, and the more I was watching a few other podcasts that were kind of going over their enjoyment of him, dude, he is spot on. Like,
good.
There was people saying, like, it's not that he's even doing a Harrison Ford impersonation. He's doing a spot on, if not as good or better, Indiana Jones impression. And obviously, that's going to be the biggest thing you want to nail. And when you've got Machine Games and these guys developing it, it's like, I think they've been working on this for a while, these types of projects with Lucasfilms. Dude, they made Indiana Jones, and I think the character that they got and the story that they have is fantastic. And then when you have Emmerich Voss as one of these main villains, dude, I was completely like blown away. It gets a little cheesy at points, but that captures the essence of the old movies. But how do you like him as a villain? And how do you like him playing Indy?
I've met him once already, and he's very intimidating. I'm like, oh, okay.
Who,
this
Troy?
is
in real life. I was like,
no, the villain did in the game
okay.
so far, and I'm like, okay, this dude's super cool, and he represents everything that I think that those movies kind of stand for, where like the Nazis are in. You know, there's always been the rumor, and there's lots of things that you can watch out there of, like, you know, the Nazis being into, like, all the supernatural stuff when trying to create, like, their super army and whatever. That seeing it, I'm like, okay, cool. This is totally nails that aesthetic and what they were about, and I'm totally on board with it. But I didn't really look too much into this game before it came out, that I had to look it up, and I'm like, is that Harrison Ford? Like, he's doing a really good, like, voice for himself, that he sounds, like, a lot younger. And then when I was like, oh shit, that's Troy Baker, I'm like, man, that's crazy. And then I was even lying about it in bed, like kind of thinking about it. I'm like, man, that dude's got like a voice with a range all over the place that he can do whatever. And I'm like, man, I really wish I could do like voice acting or something like that. Would just be so cool.
That's the career path we should have got into. But and again, I'm not sure if they've said how much maybe AI assist is in the voice. We live in a world now where a lot of that can help correct it. But being a voice actor, I'd imagine a lot of that is him. And I did want to make sure we shout out Tony Todd.
Yes.
Didn't he just pass away?
Yeah.
And
I had to look it up too. I was like, man, that looks exactly like Tony Todd. I'm like, hold on, he can't not be.
So if you guys don't know who he is, he's the character that plays Locust. You'll meet him very early in the beginning of the game. His connection and his heritage play a huge part of the story. So when you get further into that, I'd love to talk more to you about Tony Todd. But as far as anyone else, Gina, I'm sure you've met. She's as good as it can be, but other than that, I think it was well casted, and I think all the characters, the further you get, play a very fun part in exploring the game's story.
I just think it's crazy to think, like, okay, like, they made this game that fits better into the world and people love more than the past two movies.
Yeah, and again, it shows how much you get people like, because Todd Howard's a big part of this too, right? On this, and yeah. It's like, these guys are diehard fans that love this. And again, the opening of the game plays homage to just that heritage. And when you have people, it's like what's unfortunate with a lot of Star Wars stuff. But if you have people that actually know it and actually love it, you're going to get quality product versus the other way around.
Yeah.
And Indiana Jones, so far, a lot of people, I mean, we'll get to some of the gameplay. A lot of people are saying story-wise, it's some of their game of the year at the moment. I mean, I don't know what we're landing on for me. I think I can still squeeze out a couple more games before the year's over to kind of know if that would land in a top 5. But talking to Denny puts it in his top 5.
I definitely, I mean, I can't speak to it because I haven't seen the movies, but as so far playing this, I picture it as being like a perfect companion piece to go with those, to where some people are like, even though it's game, canon.
Yeah.
You know, like I consider this being in the big indieverse, whether or not you take it as it is or not, you know?
Right. So, with that being said, guys, again, I don't want to spoil any more of that for you, but just quickly talking about some of the gameplay. And I did want to just read this. The Great Circle is primarily played from the first-person perspective, with third-person being employed for contextual elements such as environmental interaction. Players control Indy as they navigate through a mix of linear, story-sensitive areas and wider exploratory landscapes. Combat can either be directly engaged or circumvented entirely through the use of stealth mechanics, and the character's signature whip can be used as both a weapon or as a means for traversing across obstacles and solving various puzzles to uncover alternate paths of obscured collectibles. So again, I won't dive too far into what you can use more of your abilities later on in the game. But in the beginning, I think one of the... You want to chime in?
I'll say, I do want to say, like, I think its biggest strength as far as those gameplays that you notice is taking all that, and this does not feel like, oh, this is just another Uncharted or another Tomb Raider. It's its own thing in its own lane, and it just does it perfectly, and I think that's its biggest strength as far as those features go.
Yeah, because I think that was one of the things that I think I definitely had a problem with when I was watching the trailers in the beginning. I'm like, the combat looks a little jank, it looks a little off, it doesn't look like it's like playing like a Call of Duty when you have guns, but when you start playing it, you realize it's not supposed to. It is its own thing. So, first, before we get into that, do you think it hurts itself staying in first-person perspective, going with third in cutscenes, or would you like the ability to switch it back and forth? Because personally, I think first-person lends itself to playing through Indy's eyes, but I know there are people that disagree.
No, I think it tells the story better by being in first-person, especially, too, when you're, like, trying to solve a puzzle, or even just swinging over stuff, or, like, stuff that's supposed to scare you, like when something pops out or whatever. Way better than it would be in third-person.
I agree. And second would be... in terms of the melee, the whip, and the gunplay, there's things everywhere for you to pick up, grab, and smash people. And I remember when people were reading about how it would work is that the things would break on you, and you're like, why do these things have a durability? But again, it's one of these things where it constantly wants you to improvise these weapons. And so if that's something that bugs you, trust me, there's more than enough melee weapons to use consistently throughout the whole game. The whip plays a perfect part, as you know it would, being able to stun characters, to climb up things. The whip's fantastic. I would say the weakest part is the gunplay, because when you're shooting it, it's not good by any means. It's not bad, it's not terrible, but it's not good. But with that being said, I think the game was designed for you to not particularly rely on the gunplay and go through it more melee, stealth, and whipping. Do you agree or disagree?
I haven't even fired the gun yet.
I didn't fire the gun until much later in the game, and I didn't know if that was it, because bringing that up to point, there's a lot of different versions of difficulty on this game, which I was curious of why. There's like 4 versions of the difficulty, and then like 3 versions of how you want to explore and get helps from puzzles and stuff. So I'm curious, because there are points, and I won't try to ruin anything.
Some of these puzzles are pretty tough.
Is if you trigger people's attention, a swarm of guys will come in with the gun, and I'm sure there's ways to fight your way out of it. But I think the game wants you to kind of really rely on sneaking by and knocking people out. And if that is the case, then they do that extremely well, because the gun part is not the best part of the game.
As soon as things go south, I whip those hands out and I'll die fighting. I'll sit there, even if I'm in a corner, trying to juke out people in like a little thing, just to get a little bit of stamina so I can throw a few more punches, and I'll just go out swinging. But I've already died a few times too, because instead of just trying to get away, I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm gonna take these guys on.
Well, and that's the other thing cool. The other thing that's cool about it as well is fighting doesn't necessarily give you experience, right? You kind of gain like a currency to buy skills, and when you can find these books later on, they kind of boost certain stats, because you will run into heavies and bigger guys that are going to take a lot more punches. But as far as and you know what took me a minute to wrap my head around, because I had to go back and go like, wait, how does this combat work? There is a whole parry system.
Yes.
There's a whole dodge system. There is a throwing haymakers and power punches. So if that is going to be, because I wish I just would have got that earlier, because then I was starting to go into the boxing rings and things like that and trying to fight these guys. I'm like, hold on, I'm doing something wrong. So I would say study the mechanics, because that is what the game is about, is this hand on fist, melee combat.
No, I'm parrying all day.
Parrying all day. So I have a couple other things that I don't know if you want to get into. The puzzles and stuff, I don't want to dive too far into it as a light review. There is a scale that make them harder. For example, there's a point where you need a certain amount of people to stand on certain things to make it work. depending on the difficulty, as I was reading into it, because I would see people's comments of being like, I can only move this person or this person. If the harder difficulty, you've got to be able to move all 5. On the lower difficulty, you only have to move 1. So there is a scale. Have you read in anything that was troubling, or just took a minute to figure out?
Some of them, yeah, especially too, because there was one where you're underground and you're looking on the bottom of these things. I forgot what it's for. I think it's for the statues or something like that. Or no, it's for a safe. And it'll have a symbol, but I didn't know what the symbols meant.
Right.
And eventually they're the symbols of the planets, like Mercury, whatever. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what this is, and I can't figure it out. And of course, I'm like kind of racking my brain trying to figure it out. I'm like, fuck it, I'll just come back to this later. But then as I'm looking around the room, then I find the other sheet of the paper that kind of tells me like, oh, okay, these are what the numbers mean. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I went back and did it. So like, if you're even missing just the tiniest piece of a puzzle, it almost seems like it's impossible trying to figure out. So even on a lower like difficulty, you still kind of have to scan the room. Like some of those things are still like a little tough.
Yeah, the thing I like best about it, because I'm not a big puzzle gamer, I don't really care for that aspect of games, but this doesn't hold your hand either. There's not an Indiana Jones who's constantly talking to you and saying, look over here, look up to the right, oh, it's down here. There's none of that. So the puzzles are going to require you to actually think outside the box. And I think that's the part I like the most, is there's just a sliding scale of how hard you want to take those puzzles on. And again, then if you want to play it again, there's replay value to up it a little bit, which I think it did really well.
Yeah, I'd say there's no like hand holding. The most you get is like a vague like yellow dot telling you where to go, and your guy might recommend something like, oh, well, maybe I should do this, or you're with somebody. I think as far as like even that goes, the most hand holdy thing you get, but I do like, is one, that yellow notification. But I really like the interactive map, because the areas are kind of big.
Yeah.
So being able to see yourself in real time moving through whatever, I'm like, okay, cool. I don't have to put down the map. I can figure out where I'm going. But still, you'll just get to a yellow circle, and then it's up to you to figure out what you're supposed to do from there.
Yeah, and the map is really cool. It's something you can pull out. It's a book that you can look at and move through. I do want to say this, because I didn't really recognize it at first. There is a fast travel system. When you walk up to, there's going to be posts and things in different areas. As long as you've been to the area that has the post, you can travel to those locations. So I don't know if you've been able to do that yet. Because in the Vatican, it'll be these places, and they'll have like little stop sign things on them.
I think I've seen them, and I didn't know what they were for.
So that's going to be fast travel. So if you do need to whip across, because I was running in the beginning of the game, I was running every place.
That's what I'm doing, running back and forth.
But I like finding everything. But if you are looking to do a fast travel system, it does do a fast travel system. And briefly, as far as the enemy AI goes, I know this is one of people's biggest complaints. It's not really that good. They have these weird cones of checking things out. It's not. Have you had any problems with any of the AI at all? Are you finding them dumb, or is it just wait till what turns left, turns right?
I mean, it is what it is, but you still kind of get caught easily. I don't think anyone, since like the Alien game, but even some people call that super aggressive, has really perfected like, oh, that enemy AI. But it also goes for you. The only problem I've had is when you're with Gina and you're following these puzzles, she wasn't moving.
Yeah,
and it's like
problem,
where you're supposed to set the fires or whatever. I had to push her through it, because I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do here. The store's not opening, so I'm running around looking around. I'm like, maybe she has to be in here. So I'm walking into her to get her a little bit up the stairs, and then sure enough, she goes to the thing. I'm like, okay, cool. And then now I can go to the next section. But other than that, I haven't had any issue. Oh, I did have one other issue where like I'm in the Vatican and there's a door, and the door's slightly open like this.
Ajar.
And obviously, you can't pull the doors open towards you. You can only push and move forward through the doors. And there was a AI guy standing on the other side of the door. So I could not get through it. So I had to like go down like 3 flights of stairs, go around, and then come up the stairs to get to the thing that I needed to do, because this guy, for whatever reason, was just stuck there. It really wasn't that big a deal. I would complain. I think my biggest complaint about this game, non-AI related, is it's kind of annoying. I wish that if you came to a door, you didn't have to go through your inventory, even though it pulls it up for you. Pull out the key, turn the key every time. Just put the key in, let me push left on the stick, unlock it, and whatever. Don't make me pull the key out manually every time. That's just a little tedious. But
well, it got to the point, because later on you're going to be doing that enough that you're going to be going X up right. And because the moment you just do, it'll just do it. So you don't gotta wait for the command to pop up. You can just
let me push X right. Don't make me push the D-pad.
And I would say the last cool thing about it that I don't know if a lot of people got in the beginning, at least from what I'm seeing, is that the game, even though it is a narrative, and if you want to get through scenario, through mission to mission to mission, each map is fairly big enough to where you can take your time and explore and do a lot of other things. There's a lot of dungeons to find. Again, there's these boxing camps you can go find. There's certain outfits you can go find that allow you to sneak into other places. So the game, once you start playing it, it's not an open world per se. It's a pseudo open world where when you're in these maps, when you move to each of these locales, you don't have to go do right away what it needs to be done. There's a lot of other things you can go do. So again, explore the game at your own pace, but remember that there are multiple things to do. With that being said, I know a lot of people are asking, what's next? Do we go move forward with Indiana Jones? Is it a number 2? Is it a third movie? Whatever it's going to be. So I just want to read this off real quick so you can kind of hear what their thoughts are. This comes from Gamertag. The full link is in the bottom of the description. It says, now speaking with Variety, Lucasfilm Games Vice President and General Manager Douglas Riley has shed some light on the game and what the future could hold for the franchise. Riley says that for the moment, the development team is solely focused on the Indiana Jones and the Great Circles DLC and making it as successful as we can. However, he did point out that they're always looking for great stories and that there's a lot of space between the films where we could tell more and more Indiana Jones stories. While there's no solid yes or no, it seems as though if the Great Circle finds fiscal success, which is unfortunate because a lot of it's going to be on Game Pass, there could be a future partnerships with Machine Games to bring more indie titles to life. So quickly, Andrew, just what would you like to see? A new entry that fills the gaps between the movies with a game, or would you like to see them really flesh out this DLC and maybe get some new locations, meet some new characters, do a lot of more kind of teaming up? What sounds more exciting to you?
I think ideally what they'll do is they'll put out some DLC, but I prefer
100% that's what they're doing.
I prefer as far as you can take this game right now, it's a big success just to move on to the next game. Like, start planning something out if you want to do it. And you could do a prequel before this one. You could do a younger indie, maybe on his first adventure. You could even do an older indie before the 4th movie, but after The Last Crusade, somewhere in between there. There's just so much timeline, especially with all the conspiracy stuff and all the, the crazy conspiracy theories out there that you could really do. So I think that's what I would look forward to next.
Perfect. So I'm going to leave it at that unless there's anything else you want to add about Indiana Jones.
I think the last thing I want to add is it is important to note that as of right now, this is only on Xbox and PC. This is not on PlayStation. I think they have said that it is coming, but there is no confirmed timeline.
No, I thought didn't they do it at the whatever event? They showed it was coming to PlayStation like January something or December something?
I don't remember seeing a date for it. I thought it was like a lot later. I thought it was...
I could have sworn that was what they did at the it was at the Xbox thing or whatever. See, Indiana Jones.
Or you're looking at that. Either way, it's just for this is a home run for Xbox, and it's finally nice to see these fruits come to bear. And for any of those people who are like, oh, it should be an exclusive, whatever. It sucks that it's coming to somewhere else, but I mean, I think this is a game that should be played everywhere.
I could have sworn they had something. I'll try to find it if I can find it, and then while I edit it, I'll put the date up if it was. But I could have sworn they had something that said...
I don't remember they had a hard date. I think they said within like 6 months or something is the rumor. I don't even think that it's like confirmed. I think they just said that it is going to be.
All right. Well, we'll find that later. So with that being said, everything good on Indiana?
Yeah.
All right. So
definitely get out there and check it out.
Definitely check it out. It's definitely worth your time. So moving on to our second main story, and that is that the Game Awards just aired on December 12th, 2024, hosted as always by Jeff Keighley at this time at the Peacock Theater in LA. It lasted roughly I think it was like 3.5 hours. It was from 5:30 to like 9 or something like that.
If you count the pre-show, yeah.
If you count the pre-show. It showed off close to 30 projects, and it was the most viewed Game Awards in history. So with that being said, I think one of the biggest things that had an issue going into this one was, and Game Awards specifically aside, is it's been around for 10 years, and I would say most people would say the last few have been a kind of miss or at least underwhelming. And I think it's safe to say, because we'll talk about the show real quick and then get into what we take away from it. I think it's safe to say that this is the best one they've done in a long time.
I would say there's a few things in there that are misstep for me, and we can get into that. But those accounted for, the quality of stuff that was shown here, I would still give the show a 10. The pros far outweigh the cons. That there might have been a little lull a little bit for me here and there, but all the stuff that I got out of this, even just with the first 5 minutes of the show, I was already like, the show can end now, and I'm already set.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said. A lot of good things were shown. I think you were kind of pointing it out. I think this was kind of Capcom's year to shine in terms of everything they were showing off, right? Was it
Capcom, Sega? Yeah. I think we're really like the big golden people here.
So, there's a lot to go over, and Andrew and I, generally what we do is when we go over these, we take away X amount of the biggest things that give us the most hype. This time, Andrew and I each picked 3 games each that were the big trailers that we're now looking forward to the most, and then at the end, we'll kind of go into the Game Awards itself. Unless there's anything else you want to add before that.
No, I was going to say, there's a ton of stuff that was shown. It was kind of hard just to narrow down the 3. I'm sure it was hard for you to narrow down your 3. That there was still even other stuff that I'm insanely excited for. I just picked the most, and it's not. I actually have mine ordered from
3 to 1.
Yeah. So least excited for, most excited for,
so
but not in order of how they were shown.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So let's start with your number 3 of in importance.
So my number 3 of importance is that Cap Gods are bringing back Onimusha. They showed off a trailer for it. Onimusha Way of the Sword is what it's called. We don't really know too much about it other than it's a 2026 release. We don't even know if it's a reboot or if it's picking up the storyline where it left. But I think Onimusha is a great game. I'm glad and really excited to see something like this come back. I think more importantly, I do have something on here that's like a 2025 release. But next year is so stacked. I don't think there's really anything too much that we know about beyond 2025. So I know some people are like, oh, if you're only going to show me a little trailer and no gameplay, why be excited? I'm excited for this stuff because now I have something to look forward to beyond 2025. Because 2025 is stacked.
I have one that I think is pitched to be in 2026, but I'll get to that on mine.
So either way, Onimusha coming back. Super excited about that because I am a big Onimusha fan.
Nice. My number 3 was simply because I'm a huge fan of the series and I want to see what they're going to do with it, even though there's a lot of hate surrounding it. Is Borderlands 4 that is scheduled right now. No hard date, but supposed to be released in 2025. I have a thing here from GameSpot if you guys want to read kind of all the announcements that will be in the description as well. But this says, Randy Pitchford took the stage to reveal the first gameplay trailer for Borderlands 4, which also mixed in some story spotlights in the form of a massive war between familiar bandits and an invading force. So one of the things that I wanted to point out that a lot of people were having an issue with, or at least versus some of the creators, are saying that they want to take out the toilet humor of Borderlands moving from 3 to 4. So I just wanted to look at that and kind of maybe get your thoughts on it, because that does turn a lot of people off. But I'd argue that some of that zaniness and
it's part of the charm
is what makes it part of the charm. And there's a difference between doing and it's not toilet humor. It's crude. It's direct. There's a reason why we like things like Ren and Stimpy or things that are Rocko's Modern Life. You can do that type of humor, but if you do it well, then it makes it what it is. When you kind of hit the bottom of the barrel, how Borderlands 2 and 3 kind of went in that direction.
More cringe than crude.
Yeah, exactly. More cringe than crude. Well said. And one of the things I just want to point out of what they were saying is, let's see, this is from Games Radar. It says, not at liberty to talk much about the content of BL4, but I remain firm in my criticism of BL3's overabundance of toilet humor. I'm not going to say there's no toilets, but if the word skibbity ships in the game under my watch, I'm going to cry real tears, Winkler said. Paul Tassi joked that we were going to have a gun called the Hawk Tua. That's fucking hilarious. And a fellow dev asked me if it was real, and I wanted to put my hand down in the sink grinder. Suffice to say, don't expect Borderlands 4 to let you use the poop farty 4000 while doing a mission to clean up porta potties with my companion Skibbity Toilet, as one fan jokingly suggested. Now, I understand that because there are tons of missions that get boring, repetitive. They're like, why am I doing this? But to say I'm going to take out what made the game funny in the first place from these top execs saying over my dead body is one thing. To move the game genre from being funny and zany to this big, powerful war and make it a more serious tone, that's another thing entirely. Yeah. So I think he's stepping on the wrong things. Instead of it being more like 2-3, we're going to move it a more serious tone. Instead of just backtracking and go, we're going to drop all the toilet humor. It's like, that's what your game was, man. The whole concept of Claptrap and all these crazy zany characters that you have to fight with. I don't know. To me, that
otherwise it's just like a mid Destiny.
Yeah. So Borderlands 4, the trailer got me hyped, but some of the controversy that was surrounding it in terms of the direction they're moving and how they worded it rubbed me the wrong way. But as far as the trailer goes, Andrew, I know you don't love Borderlands. Did 4 turn you on now that you're seeing it move in a more massive mature tone.
I wasn't crazy about the announcement, and I remember us talking badly about when they first revealed this game. This is what should have been shown when they did that first reveal, because this was good. I liked the look of the villains and kind of the idea that they were portraying of like this side versus that side, and you're kind of in the middle between two people at a larger war. And I'm like, that's dope. This looks really cool. Definitely a lot better than those streamers from 3 or whatever.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it because I think this will be a new Borderlands. So that was my number 3. What's your number 2?
My number 2, and this was the second game revealed at the show, and there was kind of a lot of misunderstanding about it. If you go check it out at IGN, they have a video and an article, because I actually got a hands-on preview. I thought it was DLC, and it's going to be From Software's Elden Ring, Night Rain. Now
explain this to me properly.
This is its own game. I thought it was DLC, and the way they made it look is it's very multiplayer heavy. So I thought maybe they were taking what after Elden Ring released. It's the same as classic Dark Souls stuff is, where if you die, you're kind of out and you don't really get to finish watching the battle. This almost seemed like they were doing what the multiplayer mods are that people modded into Elden Ring, where even if I die, I can still watch and see what's going on. I'm there until the end of the fight, and then if they die, we restart. I don't have to be resummoned or whatever. So that's kind of what it looked like. What this is and it's a bad word to use, and a lot of people are kind of, it's very controversial right now, is describing it as like Fortnite. So you are in this area, and your character has abilities with 2 other people. I believe it's 2 other people, and the area gets smaller, so it forces you at the end of a day, because it's on a 3-day cycle. At the end of each day, you fight a more powerful boss. Okay. And so throughout that day, what you're trying to do is get supplies and level up and prepare yourself for the oncoming fight is what it is. And then at the end of the 3rd day, that's when you fight like the big boss of the area. And they have all kinds of different areas like swamps and just classic Dark Souls areas. Even during the trailer, there's actually Dark Souls 3 bosses. They have the Nameless King in there. You even see the, even though you can't see that too well, it seems like there's the Firekeeper in there that's asking for your help. So they're saying that this is a parallel adjacent world to the last one for Elden Ring. It's even got some Sekiro movement where you can almost like scale walls. So it is you can play it single player that they've said, but it's a multiplayer centric, pretty much. I almost kind of
let me just, I'm not familiar. So it's on an Elden Ring 2. It'd be like Ghost of Tsushima adding Ghost Legends. It's like an add-on thing that's a standalone.
It's a standalone game, but it plays more like, I would say, Monster Hunter, but
right, but you wouldn't call it a number 2, right?
No.
It's a standalone add-on that's part of the world.
It's its own standalone thing, a part of that world,
gotcha,
with other stuff thrown in. So that's the way they explained it, is a parallel world.
Gotcha.
So it's not a sequel, but they are taking stuff from that, taking stuff from past games.
You, man?
There's lots of new stuff in it. I think my favorite part is the team is fighting like this 3-headed giant wolf that as you're fighting the boss, it separates into 3 separate wolves, so then everyone's busy trying to fight like their own wolf. It looked insanely chaotic, insanely good. I think it's weird to describe it as like a Fortnite with this time limit in this circle, but my favorite parts of Dark Souls isn't running to the boss. Even though I love exploring, it's the boss fights that are most important to me. So if I get a more streamlined version of that, why not? Because they have all the time in the world to work on whatever the next big game is. Because generally, that's what they do. They churn out something that's considered a masterpiece and huge, and then move on to the next project. So to get a little bit more that's kind of maybe got a little bit of everything and something experimental, I think they can nail it down.
Well, okay, because I'm curious. Because I didn't know how it tied in. Are you playing characters that are made up for that game, or can you port your Elden Ring character into it?
No, you're playing characters that are in here.
Okay, that's what I was
think of them almost as like classes, where they can do different things. So I think like one person has a special ability to where, let's say I did my big attack on the boss. You can use your ability that replays that attack, and so that like doubles the damage. Each one has different things.
Perfect. Excellent.
And that's surprisingly coming out in 2025.
There we go. Yeah, that's they're burning it out. So was that your number 2?
Yeah. What's yours?
So my number 2 was Witcher 4.
First game shown.
Which they don't. It's a TBA to be announced, but most people were projecting that it will be in 2026, and it's not going to hit the 2025. CD Projekt Red marked the first world premiere of the Game Awards main show with a first look at The Witcher 4. The trailer follows Ciri, the protagonist for this next game, as she tries to prevent a human sacrifice by killing a demon terrorizing a small village. Now, there were a lot of people that were, wondering why exactly you would move forward with her instead of moving towards a Geralt, because if you do that, it's like Metal Gear Solid sometimes, or where if you're moving forward with Ciri, and then that means this is canonizing, because there's multiple outcomes in Witcher. You can beat the game multiple different ways, get different endings. That means this canonizes this ending, making this kind of a timeline official. Now, I don't know how the books go, but I thought it was perfect. So there's a lot of people that were kind of like, oh, we're moving into the female protagonist era, and we want Geralt, but it's like, I think she was perfect. So I just wanted to read this, and this was some Screen Rant. It said, with The Witcher 4 seemingly taking place years after the events of the third and final conclusion of Geralt's story, The Witcher 4 will follow a more mature and veteran Ciri, who has likely defeated countless monsters before the start of the game. On top of her newly acquired Witcher powers, Ciri also wields an incredibly fancy-looking silver sword, marking her dedication towards becoming a true monster slayer. So, I don't know, I thought it was a perfect transition. It's like, hey, we've already got the games and the shows and the books with him. If you're going to move on to a new main protagonist in a series that stands on the bones of the male protagonist, I thought there's no better other way to do it. So for me, I thought Witcher 4, I didn't know if we were actually going to see it this close. I thought with Cyberpunk still not that far long ago, I was wondering when we were going to get that. And obviously if it comes in 2026, we still have, some time. But for me, once I saw it, I was like, yes, this is perfect. I have no issue playing her as the main protagonist. So for me, I'm ready to go.
No, I thought it looked good too. And they even said, I think in something separate, that Geralt will play in the game as some sort of capacity, but Ciri will also go through like the Trials of Grass, which I'm assuming is the thing to become like a Witcher or something like that. So either way, I thought it was like the natural progression of who should take up the reins.
That's what I thought.
So I don't know why people are complaining about it, but...
Complainers! So what is your number one, and then we'll get into the overall winner of the show.
My final one is going to be something from Sega, who I think absolutely killed it because they just have so much going on, and they are definitely on fire. And this is coming from RGG Studios, the people who make Like a Dragon, and it's called Project Sentry. Now, before I get into it, I know you weren't crazy about the name when we were talking about it.
It seems like a big placeholder for me, unless I'm missing what it means towards the game. Then to me, it just sounds very generic.
I thought that, but because it takes place in like an alt kind of Tokyo, the name had grown on me because you could call it Project Sentry for the first one, then be like Project Sentry Edo or something like that, and then just do different time periods of something.
If that's the direction they want to go, but yeah. The name's fine. I just was listening. I'm like, oh, this sounds like a placeholder game.
So there's no date for this. A lot of people are assuming this is going to be a 2026 game, but who knows with RGG Studios because they churn out games like crazy. Since 2020, they've actually pumped out 9 different games, including all the different like Dragons, Judgment. A lot of people thought that that's what was going to be next. Even next year, they already have 2 games with a Virtua Fighter and Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. But this game is a fictional it's set in 1915 in like a fictional alternate Tokyo. I thought the trailer was very interesting. The guy, and he could be in a Yakuza game because there are Yakuza during that time in Tokyo that seems like he's with almost like a geisha, and then he comes out and he just gets into a fight with his people on the street, and he's taking it almost looks like a scythe or like maybe a crowbar or something, and like actually killing people, whereas technically in Yakuza, even though it's crazy and out there, Kiryu has never technically canonically killed anybody, even though half the stuff he does. So if we're getting a game where you're playing as somebody who is a cold-blooded, like that kind of killer Yakuza, that would be super dope. I think it looks absolutely great. I'm extremely excited about it because I think it was last year or the year before that they put out Like a Dragon Ishin, which is they took a lot of their main characters and put them into a time a point in history, in Japan's history, and just use their cast to tell a story. So like Kiryu is someone else who's actually important in Japan. Obviously, the guy didn't look like that, but he's just playing that role. And that game was actually really good. I really enjoyed that a lot, and kind of learning that story, I thought it was really good. So if this is something similar, or even still, I just know that they could kill this time period because I've already played something that's even older than this in a time period. So I'm extremely excited about it because RGG has not missed so far.
Nice, excellent.
Your last one?
My final one was hands down the game Split Fiction, which is the latest from Hazelight Studios from, what's his name? Josef Perez? Yosef. Split Fiction is another co-op adventure like It Takes Two and No Way Out. This time, two story writers, one who writes sci-fi, the other fantasy, must traverse levels swapping between both genres in order to escape the simulation they're stuck in. Now, it wasn't the biggest blockbuster looking game. It wasn't even by means the best looking game, but as someone who I love No Way Out, and if you haven't played it, you definitely should. In a way that you see the progression going from this co-op style, not that they've created, but the way that they're expanding on how good co-op exists in 2024. No Way Out was a really cool game that had an awesome twist, and then you kind of watch that evolve into It Takes Two. Did you ever finish It Takes Two? I know you started it.
No, me and Christine need to go back. We were actually watching this and we're like, oh, we need to go back.
Yeah, so It Takes Two was a really cool thing that had a very deep storyline that was going on with it. But the cool thing is when these characters went through these different places, he kind of involved these different types of games. Like when you play it, there's racing, there's top down. So you can see the juices flowing of going, let's make this thing that has different mechanics from other games. And then when I finally saw Split Fiction, which are my favorite genres of this hardcore sci-fi and then like the medieval type fantasy, and it's going back and forth and how these characters are going to solve it with this storyline of that they're now living in the future and that these storylines they're creating in real life. I thought it was fantastic, and my brother and I beat It Takes Two together. So the moment I saw this, I remember texting him, I'm like, dude, this is going to be the game that we play. And again, I just got to give a shout out to a studio like Hazelight that's not reinventing the wheel, but not leaving it alone. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's taking something, and every innovation or every version that he's doing is innovating upon it. And at least for me, and It Takes Two was Game of the Year when it came out. So if you haven't played that or No Way Out, definitely check it out. And so for me, I'm looking at Game of the Year quality in this because the last one he played knocked it out of the park, and it was my Game of the Year as well. So seeing this thing dive back between hardcore fantasy and the sci-fi thrillers and the different levels you're going to have to go through and the different abilities you're going to be learning, for me, I was like, dude, I cannot wait for this. And it hands down stole the show for me. So
I thought this one looked really good too. I also like the idea that they're kind of like stuck in this like virtual game world thingy.
Yeah, I thought it's a really cool, when you watch the full 6-minute trailer.
Great concept.
Yeah, he goes over all that. So those were the three biggest takeaways we had. And again, we could have done an hour-long episode on it if we know, because there's just that much to talk about. But with that being said, guys, is there anything else you want to add on the games that you talked about?
No.
Alrighty, so let's move into quickly to the actual game of the year. So generally, Andrew and I, we pick out some categories and we go over and we take picks on who we think's going to win. Since Andrew and I were extremely busy over this last month, we didn't really get to do that. So I don't think there's really a point in looking at all the categories. But before we get into the main, was there a category that you wanted to talk about at all?
Nothing in really kind of particular. I think it really kind of just boiled down to Game of the Year. Everything else is
I think it was cool seeing a couple games sweep a little bit. There's a couple games that got a lot, but the Game of the Year award, as you guys know by now, was Astrobot. Its competition this year was Metaphor Refantasio by Studio Zero, Atlas, Sega, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth by Square Enix, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree from Software, Bandai Namco, Black Myth Wukong by Game Science, Balatro by Local Thunk Playstack, and then, of course, the winner, Astrobot by Team Asobi and Sony Interactive Entertainment. So, do you want to talk about the merits that it had winning, or do you want to get into some of the controversy it had leading up to it first?
I'll let you choose.
Okay, let's get into some of the controversy that led up to it, because this is, if you were to look at it, a very weird year for the games that you're looking at take front and center. So there's obviously a remake that's on this list. There's a game that people looked at, being Final Fantasy VII. There's a game that didn't get that high of Metacritic scores, like Black Myth Wukong, that still took out some other games. There's games like Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, that was DLC that a lot of people thought doesn't qualify. And then there's games like Balatro that are, when does the timeline, how much time comes into a game? A one-man game can become Game of the Year as an indie. You have Astrobot that was a hardcore 3D platformer. And then you have Metaphor ReFantazio that kind of came out of nowhere as this big epic RPG. So on its face... JRPG. On its face, it's like every one of these kind of have...
their own merits.
Yeah, and it's weird to see each of them on there. But so one of the biggest things is the Elden Ring thing. Because Elden Ring just recently came out, how many years ago? And won Game of the Year. So when people were looking at this, they're like, oh, how does the DLC get to be nominated? Now, as far as I can tell, because I don't think they changed the rules, according to the Game Award rules, DLC, and I looked it up for remakes, DLC and remakes are, including expansion packs and season passes, are eligible for nomination in any category, meaning they can be considered for awards like Game of the Year if the judges deem the creative and technical work with the DLC to be worthy of recognition. So the three key abilities are eligibility, that they are eligible. It wasn't that they aren't and they shoehorned them in. Is that they are. DLC and remakes are allowed. However, the judges will evaluate the quality of the new content within the DLC and remakes, that it's not just DLC or a remake. It needs to have significance. The controversy being sometimes nominating large DLCs from a previously awarded game for Game of the Year can generate debate among fans. And that's what's happened, is that why out of the first time in 10 years, I believe it's the first time in 10 years, is a game that just got its due and propers getting a DLC to run for Game of the Year. But now that we know that it's fair, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's something that, why is it now? I mean, obviously it checkmarked all the boxes, but I mean, is the controversy well earned, or just maybe people just don't know what they were actually talking about?
I don't get what people would complain about as far as the other side of the coin with Final Fantasy Rebirth, because no one said anything when Resident Evil 2 remakes were coming out. No, I didn't hear anyone say anything about 2, 4, or anything like that. So a remake, it's just a completely different game, even though it came out whenever. But as far as the DLC go, I personally, for my own Game of the Year, would not put DLC on there. And that's just by definition of what DLC is. Right. You know what I mean?
And that's to each their own outlet.
Yes,
yeah. Like, to take this as the Oscars, it's really not. This is just the Game of the Year awards, and there's other outlets that don't allow that. So it's just, people are just hating on them because they allowed it.
Yeah, and I'm not upset at because I didn't look up the rules, but by their own rules, if they already had it in place before the game came out, it meets all the qualifications, because this DLC did come out. I played it personally. It is the size of a whole game, and then some. It's bigger than a lot of most modern games that come out. It had everything about it. It got 10s from most review places. It was the perfect expansion to what a lot of people considered another perfect game that got 10s. So why wouldn't more of it be a good thing? I personally wouldn't put it on there, but I wasn't mad that it was on the list, and I wouldn't, especially knowing, it's not like they just made these rules up this year. This is something that's been set in place. And again, what DLC can you think of in the past?
I think Witcher 3 was one of the big ones people would bring up.
Yeah, since then, and I don't know that, I mean, people thought Night City was good, but not that good, especially when the game came out and had a lot of problems. But this is a studio that is always up for Game of the Year. They've already won. I don't know that they won for Bloodborne. I'd have to look further back, but they won for Sekiro the year that we went. They won for Elden Ring. And so something else that they put out, that when they put something out, it is that top tier quality. It is not just churn them out.
Right. And then with that being said, because I agree with you, if the rules are in place, the rules are in place. What's unfortunate, though, is if you're trying to shed light on a lot of these things. So you get a game like Balatro that's a one man studio, as far as I know.
A card-based game, I think, is more what upset people.
Yeah, which is a card game. It's easy. It's like, oh, okay, I understand if it's in Indie Debut, if it's in Indie of the Year. It started off as it's a mobile game, essentially, that was nominated for Game of the Year. I play it on PS5. It's fantastic. But with that being said, I mean, if it can land in these other categories, should it be allowed to be? I mean, again, if it checks the boxes, sure, but it's like essentially a mobile game was up for Game of the Year. Is that something that's weird? Because if it's in too many categories, then should it be in the Game of the Year category? Or does that help lend itself to being, it's because it's graded in this category, in this category, in this category?
I don't think being nominated in others is the same, and it's hard to say the amount of work, because again, I haven't played it, so I don't know exactly what it does as far as the card games go, but it's back to the Elden Ring argument. That game was nominated for Best Direction, Best Music, at best, action RPG, Game of the Year. So I don't think the other stuff, because it's been nominated for 6 other, it's called a sweep for a reason sometimes when you're winning all these different awards. That other stuff doesn't matter with the overall, is this Game of the Year material.
Right, and but that being said too, in terms of controversy, because I'm just pointing out the controversy here, it's not my opinion per se, it's just that with a game that like Balatro, you've never played it, haven't seen it, a game like Black Myth Wukong doesn't get that high of a Metacritic score when there's other games. Do you think allowing games like that, did things get snubbed? Were there things like Silent Hill 2 that deserved it? Helldivers, Prince of Persia, Stellar Blade, Dragon's Dogma 2, your game, Kunitsu-Gama, you know what I mean? Like, do these things that, if they're not rated that high, and not a lot of people are even playing them, how are they beating out games like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Silent Hill 2 and Kunitsu-Gama that everybody was buzzing about until the end of the year?
I feel like the way they could circumvent this is because they have a panel of people that nominate these games, is they should reveal who the panel... I don't know if they do this, because I don't look that far into it. So reveal who the panel is and what exactly was on the table that did get cut out, because did these people not play this game? Was this game never even on the table for discussion? Or did Balatro... Silent Hill 2 was at the bottom of the list, and Balatro just beat it out.
Yeah, because I'd have to dive more into it too, because I know they have a voting body, and it's a lot of outlets that like aren't as well recognized. So with that being said, we're not well recognized, but when enough of people that don't know as much about games are the ones voting on it, then how's that fair?
It's hard to say like what is and is not a merit. Like, how could I possibly say that Silent Hill 2, even though I haven't played either, how could I possibly say that, I'll say Metaphor, how could I possibly say Metaphor is better than Balatro? Metaphor is a game I'm going to beat once. Balatro could be something you play every day of your life.
I feel you on that. And with that being said, the final thing I have an issue with that I think needs to be changed. The other things are just pointed contingencies, or you can look at and be like, that doesn't sound right, but it's in the rules. The biggest thing I think they need to change when this thing airs. This thing needs to air in January, because the cutoff date doesn't make any sense. It's not fair for a lot of games.
I'll tell you why they do it.
Well, sure, but again, it's not fair.
It's not.
The cutoff date for games to be eligible for the Game Awards 2024 was Friday, November 22nd. So you have games that haven't even come out, like
Indiana Jones
comes out December 9th. It will never be talked about in 2024, and by the time it
came out so early,
it can be recognized for 2025, everyone's already forgot about it. So regardless of their reason for maybe why it needs to be shoehorned into December and a cutoff date of November, to have these awards and you're going to call them the best games of the year is inaccurate, because you're not allowing every game of the year to be in the running. So by definition, it's not accurate.
Yeah, I do wish that this was something that did air in January.
And how hard would it be January 10th?
I would like, actually, I really wish Geoff would come out and like answer this as to either why or why he cannot move it. And the only real logical conclusion I come to is the sponsorships and monies he probably gets from these games being featured in the game trailer, not just the game trailers, but hey, we'll give you these trailers because we have a lot of game nominations in there. So we want to hype up our other stuff before the big Christmas sale and everything like that. And that's really the only reason I could absolutely think of. And that's probably why he stays silent on that.
Yeah, so with that being said, that was the controversy, and you can pick it apart however you want. But as far as the winner goes, it was... And I think the three big ones I think it was going to be was, I like Final Fantasy VII in the running, you like Metaphor, but I think everybody had their eye on Astrobot. Well-deserved, do you think a hype train that came and went? Do you think it's going to be talked about for a while?
I think so. I mean, a lot of people love it, and it's definitely going to get like a sequel, because that game did well. Who am I to say, Mario's considered one of the greatest games of all time for a reason. Who's to say that, I created another perfect platformer? So I don't think anyone got snubbed. I don't know if you've seen this, But I think it's the director for Black Myth Wukong came out and was talking shit, and he was like, I think we need to reevaluate what the decisions are for what can and can't be Game of the Year, because he thought he was a shoo-in to win. He's like, I wrote my Game of the Year speech like 2 years ago, and it's like, dude, your game kind of came and went. I don't know too many people talked about it the way they talked about Elden Ring, so you would have lost to that DLC. You would have lost to Metaphor, because a majority of your sales, I don't think, are personally from like America, even though the game did well. I think a majority of it came from China, because this is the first big Chinese game, and it is good to see something like that on there, because that does represent something. But I also think Final Fantasy would have beat it out. I don't think that Black Myth Wukong would have been the Game of the Year no matter what. So I don't understand why you can just be humble and be like, it's just an honor to be nominated, especially to be the first Chinese game company to be nominated for something like that, the first Chinese artist to be there to be on that board. But now you're just talking shit and talking about you thought your game was a shoo-in when you couldn't even get it unless there's some sort of secret deal with that conspiracy theory. You couldn't even get it to run on Xbox, so you already have your player base. So I don't understand where you thought, like, this is it, guys, we got it locked in the bag.
Yeah, so and again, you can look at it in terms of size, you can look at it in terms of how long it is, what's in it, what's packed into the game, because for me, I still think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the game I'm like, damn, dude, there's a lot in this. I've got Final Fantasy on my wall. Like, this means something to me. But the difference what made Astrobot my game of the year was because it was fun. The music was enjoyable. It was a game I was able to beat with Grayson. We 100%ed it on both of our systems. It's coming out with free DLC in terms of the time trials. There's also a new one called Winter Wonder, or Winter Wonderland. I think it's called Winter Wonder. It's so charming that I think it's nice to know, especially coming off of Astro's Playroom, is that everyone's like, man, this is something to keep an eye on. And you said it well too, where it's like, dude, it's essentially, if you can nominate Mario every year for it, this is a better version of a Sony Mario. And to me, I had nothing but fun. I would, dude, but when you do spend the night, now that there's plenty of space here and we can have game nights, I want you to run through a couple things of Astro, and I think everyone should be able to play it, and it's cool that Sony has this exclusive. Again, Sony won a Game of the Year through Game Awards, but it's worth playing. It's worth, I don't want to say worth maybe buying a PlayStation 4, but if you have one, you definitely need that game. Where I can't really say that about all the other ones, because Black Myth Wukong right now is only on PlayStation 5. I don't think you need to play that on a Sony, but everyone should play Astrobot.
As far as Astrobot goes, I mean, it's a super popular game. I don't think it would change your mind. I can't wait for you to play Metaphor, because I personally...
The day and night system is what's throwing me off.
I personally think that you'll like it more than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Ooh.
I personally
but when
think
are you gonna, so. Okay, but if I do that, when are you going to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
When it comes to Xbox, we're waiting. Every year.
Because you got to do remake first.
Every year, this is our year.
I'm looking at this as a build-up story of what I got from, a couple years ago, a remake. So I'm like, damn, Rebirth is awesome. So for me, as somebody that's locked into both these games, I'm like, yeah, this thing builds upon this. Where Astrobot, man, pick up and play. Someone as young as Grayson, as old as me are playing this and thoroughly enjoying it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what a generalized great game needs to be. So, you don't need any hard investment. Pick up, play, have fun, multiple people, run around and just enjoy that sound, that, those awesome memories of unlocking memory cards and stuff like that. So I think it's well deserved. Is it going to be my number one? I think so, but we'll see.
I was like, now that I've thought about it personally, as far as the Game Awards go, it's a shame that Indiana Jones didn't make it on time, because there's no way it's going to win next year, because Grand Theft Auto it's going to sweep.
It's screwed next year.
So nothing that comes out next year is going to matter.
Ghost coming out next year?
It's going to be Grand Theft Auto, I think, across the board, no matter what, because those games, when they come out, are absolute juggernauts. So it'll probably get mentioned, but it would have been nice to see this, because this year I could see it could have been a contender with people talking about it had you dropped it a month sooner.
Nice. So, guys, anything else you want to say about the Game Awards or anything like that?
No, definitely get out there and check it out. There's a million other really good games to be hyped for, especially some big ones from Sony that we had been talking about before that we couldn't even kind of put an idea on. Definitely go check it out. I mean, there was just so much stuff. It was a really good show.
So, this episode went long, but I think after not doing an episode, we're entitled to go as long as we need to. But I believe we'll do our next week episode as our end of the year episode. And then I'm thinking we're going to record our top 5. And then we'll post that for the next week as well. So we should have the next 2 weeks of content good to go, yeah?
Yeah, fuck you, Jeff. We'll have the real game of the year.
Alrighty, guys. So that is the end of episode 206. Make sure to join us, guys, on 207. And until next time, guys, my name is Craig Perales. This is Mandra Montemayor. Cheers.
Wish me a happy birthday.